Berserk is a 1997 series based on the manga with the same name by Kentaro Miura's series that still didn't end and unfortunately might not end unless another person takes over, as Miura passed away in 2021. The show follows Guts, a lone mercenary who looks for battles, driven solely by his will to survive. Kinda like Ryu from Street Fighter, but a lot darker and more violent. He ends up joining the Band of the Hawk after being defeated in combat by its commander Griffith. He becomes part of this band and follows Griffith's ambitions to become more than just a band of mercenaries. Using his intellect and his men, Griffith, together with Guts' amazing skills at fighting, bring Griffith to more and more power. But as they say, high trees catch lots of wind and people will try to bring them down. Berserk is said to be a brutal and violent tale, but for the most part of this series you wouldn't really say it. The animation is well done and the violence and rough stuff starts near the end of the season. It makes you want to have more, but then it just stops. Back in the day it must have been extremely frustrating as there was not enough material to continue, but we're a decade later now and luckily at least have a continuation in the form of Berserk 2016. Overall, this first season of Berserk sets up the characters and what will happen after. The ball gets rolling in the last few episodes, but by then that ball has poison spikes and gore all over it. Gore and other stuff that people won't be able to watch without at least raising an eyebrow. It's good stuff, but not for the faint of heart. Watch it. Watch it now. Check that. Berserk 2016 continues the story of the 1997 series by showing us what happened after the 97 season finale. Guts is alone and the world has become a darker place. Hunted by demons, Guts will have to fight for his life around almost every corner. He meets some unlikely allies and is in search of Casca, who now deals with the after effects of what she experienced in the first season. There's more fighting and more demons in this season, which is a stark contrast between the first season where most of the episodes were merely human-on-human warfare. They also introduce new characters in the form of religious zealots who are using this new world to gain more power. Overall, this season is a little bit more interesting to me due to the religious and demonic factor, but the downside is that they decided to go for a 3D cel-shaded look. Unfortunately, that technology isn't really good in this series and it often looks like shit. Eventually you'll get used to it, but certain animations, especially the faces, simply don't work and give you that uncanny valley nonsense. The story is great however, so you can forgive it for its mediocre animations and looks, but still, imagine how this would have been with the same animation from the first one or the movies. A missed opportunity, but still a great series that continues but not finished. The story of Berserk. Check that. Lastly, in the Berserk media series there are the Berserk Golden Age movies. There are 3 in total and they pretty much all tell the story from the first 1997 season in a more condensed version. Due to this there isn't really much to say about this, as we have already discussed the first season at the beginning of this review. The first one, Egg of the King, tells us the story from the beginning of the season up to the point where they meet the royalty they have been working for all this time. The second Golden Arc movie, The Battle for Doldrey, continues the story to show us you guessed it, the Battle of Doldrey, where the Tutor is stripped from his power up to the point where Griffith does his deed with that one member of the royal family and gets punished for it. Movie 3, The Advent, shows the rest of the season, from saving Griffith to the demons taking over and coming to Earth. By far the best part of the whole Berserk Golden Age arc saga and the first season created in 1997. Most of the rough stuff people talk about when they mention Berserk, at least for the anime, will occur in this movie without a flinch, without remorse. Brutal, harsh and violent. For people who do not want to sit through 25-30 minute episodes, I would recommend the Golden Arc movies. You won't miss much, but there's of course certain scenes that you'll have to miss. For people who want the full experience, please watch the original season completely and you're pretty much set. There's little to no point to watching the movies once you do that, since most, if not all of the scenes, come from the 97 series. Overall, I would very much recommend the Berserk series. We're still waiting on the manga comics to be finished. We don't know if there will be more anime series or movies, but as it stands, it's a great story with mostly great animation that you definitely need to see. Check that. May God forgive you, but I won't. Not to be confused with the Terence Hill and Bud Spencer movie called God Forgives, I Don't, is a 1968 Italian spaghetti western movie about Giamango, a man who was away from home for a while. Upon returning home, however, he sees that his whole family was slaughtered and killed. This would not be a western movie if our protagonist wouldn't seek revenge, so together with an unlikely companion, he goes out to kill the people involved in the massacre of his family. This also wouldn't be a movie if you didn't realize that he might not get the answers that he wanted to get either. May God forgive you, but I won't. Besides having an awesome title, is a fairly straightforward and cliché western movie. There's nothing really to say about this, cause if you saw one you pretty much saw them all. Only for fans of the genre who enjoy experiencing similar plotlines across multiple movies done slightly different with different actors and settings. God Forgives, I Don't. Check that. In a not-so-far-away future, the world has become another Dust Bowl. A lone traveler named Virgil, played by a roughed-up Zac Efron, arrives at a gas station/outpost and meets up with a local man, Keith, to transport him to an area known as the Compound. Along the route, however, they discover something amazing. A massive load of gold that could bring wealth to both for decades to come. The problem: how do they move it? You don't have to be a genius to figure out that this amount of wealth could pose some problems, but before all that happens, they decide that one person remains with the find while the other goes to fetch heavy gear to take it out. Unfortunately, he doesn't return fast enough, and the poor man remaining has to deal with the elements, his sanity and paranoia. Gold is a simple yet interesting movie that twists the gold rush phenomenon, and of course as you wonder who is going to betray whom. Where it fails, however, is how simple it is, as we spend most of the time with one character guarding a massive amount of gold, dealing with the sun, trying not to die. Due to this is more a movie like 125 Hours or Wrecked than a science fiction tale about greed. I'm really glad Zac Efron looks as rough as he did, cause in most of his roles he's just way too pretty. In this one he has a beard, is unwashed, and there's even flies walking across his face and back. The story is simple and there's not a lot to this movie, but I did enjoy it. Watch it if you like to see where we'll all be at in a couple of years, and hope that you remember not to trust anyone when you find a huge gold nugget in the desert. Check that. Sister Emanuelle is an unofficial movie featuring the 70s softcore porno queen Emanuelle, originally played by the Dutch actress Sylvia Kristel. There are a massive amount of Emanuelle movies, both official and unofficial, and this one offers the role to one of Kristel's co-actresses from one of her movies called Laura Gemza. Laura is quite the treat to the eyes, and in this one she plays a nun who is tasked to bring an unruly girl to the convent so she can accept God and bring purity to her impure mind. This girl, played by alluring Monica Zanchai, starts to seduce several people and have a sexy time with them. When she meets a criminal and rapist in a barn, she attempts to lure now pure Emanuelle back into a world of sin. The sexual acts depicted in this movie is fairly tame, but you would be surprised to see a full-on no short fellatio scene in the Italian version, which gave this an X-rated stamp. Don't expect too much of this movie, as this still is a soft-core erotic movie dipped in some sex and nunsploitation mixed with the schoolgirl fantasy, but do be surprised when they show you an extremely overdone trope at the end which will put your brain at work for at least 10 more minutes. Sister Emanuelle is what it is, a flesh flick with beautiful women, and it exists to titillate and fantasize about. It's not high art, it's not Oscar worthy, it is what it is, and it does it just fine. Check that. Metropolis by Fritz Lang is an all-time classic and cinematographic masterpiece. It was a science fiction movie from 1927, and I never saw the complete version of it. Shame on me, Robotron. Shame on me. But now, almost 100 years after it came into existence, I did so. Screw all you all haters. I didn't just watch the normal version. Knew you? I watched the 1984 Moroder version where Giorgio Moroder cut the movie they had back then and put music in from contemporary artists such as Freddie Mercury, Adamant, Loverboy and Bonnie. Total Eclipse of the Heart. Tyler. The movie shows us the dark and dystopic future of Metropolis, a giant city where the rich and powerful live in lavish mansions in the skies while the worker bees are downstairs working their asses off. One of the peeps upstairs falls in love with a mysterious woman who barges in his garden with a bunch of kids and he tries to find her. She apparently leads a worker rebellion and tries to get the fat cats upstairs to consider us plebs to be more than just cannon fodder and wage slaves. Things get a wee bit more complicated when that guy's father decides to kidnap said woman to use her image for a robot who in turn decides to turn the workers against the 1%ers, creating chaos and violence all around. Suffice to say there's a lot in this movie and was quite prophetic for being made almost 100 years ago. Much like 1984, it features some of the most iconic visuals ever, from the changing of the shifts to Moloch eating civilians and of course the creation of the robot. Metropolis is epic and a must-see, but the Moroder version doesn't offer enough for me to make it worthwhile. The music used in the movie is more miss than hit and I found many of the songs didn't match the visuals. There have been many other versions of this movie besides the remastered original, so I'd suggest watching one of those instead. I'd personally still love to see the Queen version myself and still need to see the remastered original myself, but as you know I generally don't rewatch movies unless they're really good. Moroder is something you can skip in my opinion, so just check that. Yeah, the rich. It's something that has been popular these past 2 days, but it existed for quite a while now. Eat the Rich is an anarchistic movie from the late 80s featuring none other than Lemmy from Motorhead, who was also kind enough to use a couple of his songs in this crazy movie. In Eat the Rich, a disgruntled waitress played by Alpile gets fired from her job. After a short while on the streets, he, or she calls Alpile is kind of a drag queen, sees a terrorist attack, after which he decides to take matters in her own hands by shooting up a welfare office. She does even more stuff and becomes public enemy number 1, being chased by Lemmy from Motorhead and other governmental people who are trying to keep it all on the level. More stuff happens, but I'll leave this for you to see yourself. The movie features a lot of famous people such as Rick Mayall, Robbie Coltrane, Jimmy Fagg, Paul McCartney, Jules Holland and many more, which is quite ironic cause all of those people, at least the living ones, would be put on a slab to be eaten themselves these days. Eat the Rich is a novel movie that still feels quite punk even though true punk was on its way out by then. Its comedy is black but allowed me to smile a little bit now and then, which is always a good thing, at least for my health. Not for the wrinkles it creates in my face. It's over the top and British to the T and definitely a relic of its time. I liked it. I did. Check that.